Hey, everybody, it's Marnie. I'm excited to have you with us this afternoon for this interview with Amy Joob. She's the author of a new book that's just out, Unstuck, Step into the New. And during this segment, we are going to talk about Amy's list of 3 seasons of stuck that God helped her overcome, the power of community, changes Amy made that you can make to get unstuck. Also, some strategies to implement to overcome and find victory in stuck or even abusive relationships. What Amy's family did when the pandemic wiped out their income. Also, how it felt to start over at 50, and some advice for times you must reinvent yourself. Some tips to cope with long-term medical conditions in the family. So a number one key that Amy found to building stronger prayer life. The role of forgiveness in getting unstuck, as well as how to create an atmosphere of calm in a busy home and family. Our guest today, Amy Joob, is an award-winning author, speaker, and professional model turned advocate. She hosts the podcast Support Someone Saturday and just released a 40-day prayer journal titled Unstuck. You can learn more about her over at her website, amyjoob.com, and also invite Amy to speak anytime you need a speaker over at womenspeakers.com. She will help you over there. And we're excited to bring you on right now, Amy. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marnie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's so great to have you. And I just love your heart. And I know you are all about prayer. That's your big deal, is you are the prayer girl.
I sure am.
all of us love prayer. But you have really found a calling in helping women and even men, but women in particular, to embrace the power of prayer.
Yes, you're right. I think because I've been through so much in my life, and every time like some difficulty or challenge comes, and more as I get older too, I just really press into the Lord, and I see the results of prayer and how it gives you such a peace and gives you perspective, and then just how God answers, and then the power of prayer partners too. It's just amazing. So yeah, prayer works.
Love that. So real quickly, just to give people a background, how come you can talk to us about getting unstuck?
Okay.
I want you to just talk about, you've had more, but talk about just 3 of the seasons real quickly where God helped you get unstuck.
Sure. So I grew up with a lot of abuse, physical and emotional. And because of that, there was a lot of pain in my life. And as an adult, I became a Christian at 21, and I had lived a kind of crazy lifestyle, including a lot of drinking and, basically pretty much an alcoholic. And so once I got married and I was a Christian, I really had to work through that abusive past and really work on forgiving and work on myself, And then as time went on, I realized, like, after our son was born, a couple of years into it, he had a couple of surgeries, and I was really self-medicating with alcohol. So I wasn't getting drunk all the time. I wasn't going out to the bars. I was still reading my Bible and everything. But God just showed me it was becoming a crutch. I was looking forward to every night having a couple of drinks, and really realizing I was depending on it, and knowing I had a real addiction when I was younger. I didn't want to go back down that path, and alcoholism runs in my family. So I made the decision to stop drinking on January 1st of 2011. So it's been about 10 years now, and I've really worked through a lot of the things that I was covering up with my drinking. So it's not always fun, It's like the pain is staying the same has to become greater than the pain of change, So you work through those changes. And a 3rd season, I think, of Unstuck was our son's diagnosis with Noonan syndrome. He was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder back in 2017, about 4 years ago. And of course, that was a really hard thing to accept. And it took about 2 years to get to the bottom of it. So that was another season we had to work through and get unstuck from, and prayer played a big part.
One of the things that's really coming out as you're just sharing so briefly these really traumatic seasons is the process. And it doesn't just like instantly get all better.
No. Yeah. No, you're right. It does take time. And I think when you've been hurt a lot, one thing I've learned through my therapist, I've gone through a lot of, Christian therapy, is that people will hurt you, but people will also help you heal. So ultimately, Jesus is the healer. If anyone's out there feeling so devastated right now and has been through trauma, is to ask Jesus to meet you in the pain, because he'll meet you there, and then reach out again. You got to share it with someone, because, people will also help you heal and move forward.
Right. So beautiful. Well, we've got so much ground to cover, and I want to get through some of this. And you guys, you want to get the journal too, the book Unstuck. But talk to us about when you're stuck. Where's the power in community?
Yes. I think like most recently when we found out Ashton was diagnosed with Noonan syndrome, like that night, Eric and I went to our small group at church. And so I never even really got to process through it. Like we kind of knew it was coming. You had the test, but of course it was devastating to get the call from the doctor. And then right there in our small group, we were able to process through with other couples, and it helped so much. And they just rallied around us. And I mean, to this day, I feel such a strong bond to them, even though we're not all in small group, because they walked with us in such a hard place. And our church really came alongside of us. And we go to Willow Creek here in Illinois, and our small group, we were greeters. They really came around us. Like they were like mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas, because there was like almost 50 of us in this group. And we were some of the younger ones. Our kids were even in the group. And when we had the GoFundMe, they just poured out blessings on us. They helped us do different things. And it was such a blessing. We totally needed that, the community.
There was a young man at church a few weeks ago who had left the church for a while, and it was my first time to meet him because we were new at this church since he left. And he came back and he says, I just don't ever think of coming to church on Sunday. I should, but I don't. And I said, I never think of it as going to church. I think of it as going to hang out with my family.
Yeah,
it's the family of God, and so you can call it a job or something that you have to click off, or you can go hang out with your family.
Yes, I love that.
And then like what happened for you when you hit a hard time, there are people who love you, who know you, who love Jesus, who want to come around and support you. And of course, we get the privilege of doing that in other people's lives as well when they're in need.
Yes, definitely. Yes, it's a two-way street. And I think the more you've been helped, the more you want to help others.
Actually, the more grace we receive, the more grace we want to give, right? Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So what were some changes that you had to make to get unstuck?
I kind of think of last year, like coming through the pandemic, and I mean, after Ashton's diagnosis, reaching out, like I said, allowing other people to bless you. I think that's a part of it, whether when he was diagnosed or even last year, going through the changes, being open to receive, like a lot of times we want to give, but it's like harder to receive, right? It takes humility. So I think that, being willing to reach out, being willing to receive, and then I think being willing to try something new. In fact, my word for the year is change. And we've had to reinvent. My husband does live events. He had no work for a while, and we had to be willing to try something new. My whole industry went away, trade shows and entertainment. And so I started embracing writing and speaking. And so it's being willing to try something new, even though you might feel like, I'm not really good at this. How can I try this now? But just being open and flexible. I think that's helpful to getting unstuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are some strategies to implement to help us overcome and find victory in the stuck places?
I think for me, I went through therapy, and I know we're talking a little bit about abusive past or hard relationships, or maybe your career's changed, you lost your business or you lost your job. And so I think reaching out, even getting professional help, it's totally okay. I think the stigma is going away for Christians, right?
I hope
it's
so.
Okay, it's okay. Or even if you need to be on medication for a season, that's okay too, because God works in amazing ways. And for me, I have prayer partners. So that's been huge, even texting prayer partners that we can, text each other, hey, here's what I need prayer for today. I've also done seasons of fasting, and there's different types of fasts that you can do. And I think that can bring breakthrough in your life. And of course, just being in prayer and the word, it's been huge for me, even more so in the last year or so. And I think, even if he wakes me up early, maybe I need to get up early and pray, because I need more of him to get through. So,
yeah. That's one of the things that I came to understand too, is if I wake up in the night or if I wake up early, it's usually Jesus calling.
Exactly.
Don't get so mad.
I love that. Yes. Yes.
Just say, oh, did you want to talk to me?
Yeah. And you know what I find? He'll get you through the whole day, right? Can you
He
testify to
does.
that? You could wake up at 3:30 a.m. and you're like, how will I be up now till 10
Yes.
o'clock at night? And you are. And
He
you are
redeems the
full of
time.
joy. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And there was something else you said, and now I think I can't remember what it was that I wanted to tag
Okay.
off of, but yep, we'll come back to it. It'll come up again, I'm
Okay.
sure, as we go.
Mhm.
So, what did your family do? So this is when I actually met you, Amy.
Yes, I know.
You were just like going, what?
Mhm.
What?
Mhm.
Our whole world is gone.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Marnie. You came alongside of me. So there, another answer to prayer. God is good. But yeah, I think it's really hard, For Eric, my husband, he was doing live events. There was nothing for 3 months. So he did construction. He went back to something he had done before. And then he hired a lot of guys that he had worked with in production. They were carpenters and did things. So now he could hire them. And then he started doing online events. So it's like reinventing, it's so different than live events, but we prayed for key people. God brought us those people that could know how to stream and do different things. And so he started doing that. And then honestly, for me, I had to go on unemployment. And this was very humbling for me. Usually unemployment doesn't exist for my line of work. I'm an independent contractor, but because there was no industry, there's no trade shows, there was nothing, I was able to go on it for a season. And so I really felt like during that time, the Lord was like, I'm giving you this time, get this book done. And I started my podcast. So I really was working hard, even though I wasn't, making a regular paycheck. But I was willing to do that for a season and then just step out in faith. So I think it takes a lot of faith. But God has been meeting us. So it's just being willing to reinvent. And I think one thing he's been telling me, like, Amy, these things are not setbacks. These are set ups for something greater.
I love it.
Not a setback, it's a setup.
It's a setup. Yeah. I love that. That's so good. I did remember what I was going to say. And I love, one of the things that I love about my life is that I'm very present in the moment with you. I'm not thinking about what just happened or what's going to happen, but that makes me forget things as I'm listening to you.
Okay.
But what I was thinking of was we were talking about hopefully it's becoming more okay for Christians to get psychological help and even medication or whatever. For years, I have said, if we break our wrist, we go to the doctor, we get it set, we get it cast, we get meds, and we get through it.
Yes.
And then depending on how bad it was, we maybe have to have therapy afterwards, right?
Yes.
Now, I believe that just like a bone can be broken, something in here can get broken.
Yes. Yeah.
Broken.
Yes.
And it takes time to heal that. And sometimes it takes professional help to heal it. And this is nothing to be ashamed about.
Yes.
This is actually to be grateful about, that God has provided so much good help for us in the world today. And, thank you for bringing that up and for just being vulnerable. Now, I am wondering who the 50-year-old is here, because you cannot be 50. That's so funny. It's just humbling being sitting next to a model,
You're so cute. Thank you.
But you turned 50, your whole world fell apart.
Yeah, well, I'm getting ready to be 50, so in November.
Okay, you haven't yet.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'm not with a 50-year-old yet.
Yeah, I'm 49 in 11 months.
And forever. 49 and forever. Oh, that's so funny. Well, happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And something that Pam Farrell said to me when I turned 50 helped so much. She said, woohoo, it's the year of Jubilee.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yes. So just
awesome.
Celebrate that God caught you there.
Yeah.
And got a lot more for you in the future. So turning 50, you've been thinking about this a little bit. And what did you think about?
It's interesting. This past year, God reminded me, I was starting to speak back in about 2006, more to like women and youth. And I had done some, but I thought I was really ramping up. And now I'm going to take off into speaking. And my daughter was like 1. I was up in Wisconsin Dells speaking at a youth convention. Okay. So I walk out on stage and like, it just like dropped in my spirit. Like it was the Lord, I'm sure. Cause I wasn't even thinking about this. He was like, your speaking career will take off when you're 50. And I remember going, what? I'm 34 at the time. I was like, God, 16 years,
I know, right?
It seemed like forever, but I kind of forgot about that until this past year. And he's like, Amy, see, I was preparing you,
Yes.
I wasn't ready yet or my family wasn't ready. So you know what? It's never too late. Like the
Right.
gifts and the call of God are without repentance. And, he can start you at any age. It's never too late to start. So,
Yeah, and you know what? There is something about seasons
mm-hmm.
and letting God do the
Yeah.
seasons. Your kids will only be little once.
Yes. Yes. This
That
is
is
so true.
such a precious season.
Mm-hmm.
And I know in 2002, when I started
Yeah.
womenspeakers.com, I was speaking and all that. And then immediately after I started it, God said, "Oh, okay, now you're not going to speak anymore, Marnie, unless it's a pinch hit situation." So
Okay.
there was specific
Mm-hmm.
guidelines. They had to have a speaker set up. It had to be
Yeah.
within 3 weeks. It had to be an emergency. I mean, it was
Okay.
so specific. I had to have people who could cover me at home, at the
Yeah.
businesses, whatever. And it was very specific. But for 10 years,
Wow.
all I got
Wow.
to do was book
Yeah.
everybody else and speak there and
Wow.
watch it.
That's really hard.
It
That's
was
really
super
hard.
hard because I love to speak.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's so funny because I've had a lot of speakers say to me, "I bet you get all the bookings." And I'm like, "Well, not exactly, but whatever."
Yeah. You're being obedient to the Lord, right? You're
You
obeying him.
just have to walk in
Yeah.
obedience.
Yes.
Yeah, and when
Mhm.
he says he wants you to speak, it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean tomorrow, you
Yeah.
know? But
Mhm.
you take all those things you learned then,
Mhm.
you're applying now, right?
Yes, totally.
Yeah, all of
And I
it
had
goes
to
in.
die to myself. I will have to say that with Ashton's diagnosis and
Yes.
everything, I just died to all my dreams. And I was like,
Yep,
okay, God, I got to this place of acceptance. If my job is
yep,
to take care of my son and my family the rest of my
right?
life, then that's what I'll do. I mean, you
Yep,
gave me an amazing modeling career and maybe
yeah,
that's it. And then
yeah.
with the first book coming out like 2 years ago, my dreams started to like slowly come back. And I was like, wow, maybe God isn't done with me. Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
do feel like so many times when I've died to
Mhm.
a dream,
Yeah.
then he brings it back so much bigger than like,
Mhm.
it wasn't even in my head as big as
Yeah.
he brings it back.
Yeah. There you go. That's
Okay,
cool.
let's touch for a minute on the people who feel
Mhm.
stuck because now I've got this long-term diagnosis and I
Mhm.
just don't know how to process it. And what should I
Sure.
do?
I think it's really hard. I mean, honestly, if
Mhm.
anyone's out
Yeah,
there, I mean, ours was, a growth hormone deficiency disorder, genetic disorder, and he's affected in different ways. So I know everyone's is different, but it can be devastating. And I think, initially as a Christian, you might feel guilt. And I felt like, wow, I fasted, I prayed, God, what did I do wrong? Like,
right.
did I not do something enough? And so it's just coming to acceptance. And then I think you have to give yourself permission to grieve because this wasn't what you had hoped
Absolutely.
for, right? For yourself, for your child. And so however long that takes. And I used to like get up in the night because a friend told me like, Amy, you shouldn't probably cry in front of your kids all the time. But honestly, in the beginning, it's like I couldn't stop crying. But then I eventually started grieving in the middle of the night and I would go down on the couch and my dog would always come. It was like, that was kind of like God's way of saying, I'm here, Amy. Yeah, so just cry it out, it's
Right.
like you're going to carry that
Mhm.
inside. And so I would say to give yourself permission to grieve, ask Jesus to meet you in the pain. I have a good friend, Judy, that walked with me in this dark season. And man, it's like she came into my cave and was like, come on, get out of here, but she loved me in the midst of that cave. And, that's kind of where the birthing of this book first started. It was like she'd help me find the next right step. And she helped me get unstuck during that season. And so it's kind of like, allow Jesus to meet you in the pain, even if you can't get
Right.
up, you can bring it to God and then let him bring you people like, God, send me someone that can help me
Yes.
because this is really hard. And then
Yeah.
finally, again, the community, you have to let people in. Like Ashton has a huge medical team. And there's times I've just cried about that. Like, God, thank you for all these amazing doctors and specialists that love us. His
Right.
endocrinologist is a strong Christian. I mean, the first time we went to see her, she's like,
Mm.
Ashton, memorize Jeremiah 29:11. Noonan syndrome is your
Nice.
platform to share Jesus. So it's like, thank God for Christian
This is
doctors.
my prescription for you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love it.
so it's good to have like people and then like the church. It's just like it does take a village sometimes. If you have a special needs child, allow people in. One little quick story: when we were drowning in medical bills a couple years ago, I was literally driving down the street and I was like, okay, God, I don't know how we're going to get through all this. And his medication was super expensive and we kept getting denied by insurance. And I just said, I trust you, Jesus. And literally in that moment, when I said that, my phone rang. It was my good friend, Heather. And she said, Amy, can we please start a GoFundMe for Ashton? and it saved us. It saved us. It's like, okay. God,
Isn't
you're
that
so
something?
good. So yeah,
Right.
let other people help you. Yeah.
I think the fact that you allowed yourself to grieve is
Mhm.
actually what opened you up to
Yeah.
be able to receive all the
Mhm.
gifts that God
Yes.
had for you.
Mhm.
I have to tell you, I this is one of the things I
Yeah.
really train women is that we don't grieve enough.
Yeah. It's
You
true.
know, when you have a new baby,
Mhm.
that is such a joyous time,
Yeah.
but honestly, you just lost a lot of freedom.
Yes.
If
Yes.
it's your first child, you just lost your
Mhm.
husband and you all to yourselves. You know,
Mhm.
you lost a lot bringing that
Yes.
baby home.
Yes.
And because our culture is just all about the celebration part,
Mhm.
we don't ever grieve through what we lost. So what we do is we shove it down,
Mhm.
and that uses up some of the space in our soul that
Yes.
God intended for blessing.
Yeah, I agree. And then we turn
Yeah.
into these like bad coping mechanisms, right? With
Right.
drinking or overeating or
Exactly. Right.
overspending because we're hurting. So we're
Yeah.
trying to find
Right.
a fix. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that about grieving. It's really, really important. So what was your
Yeah.
number one key to building a stronger prayer life?
Oh,
Getting
wow.
desperate, right? That
I
helps a
know,
lot,
right?
right?
Yes. I think being intentional, I guess that
Yeah,
would be my number one key.
yeah.
Like being intentional, I would say I'm not a morning person and my husband's more of a morning person, but now I am. I feel like he's telling me to get up early and it's not always easy to get up early. And, it's like I'm dying to flesh, but when you do, it's like the quiet of the morning, like the kids are still asleep. The world is quiet. You can just hear from the Lord and it can be just that intimate time, no matter how much you have going on in the day. And like I used to do trade shows and I'd have to leave at like 5 a.m, but sometimes the Lord would wake me up at like 3:30. I'd just get up and have that time with him first. It sounds crazy, but somehow he got me through the whole day and I was stronger for it. So it's kind of an oxymoron. Like you wouldn't think like losing 2 hours of sleep or an hour of sleep is going to help you, but he multiplies your energy, your time, and you just
Right.
see him move. It's just so
Yeah.
powerful.
It
Yeah.
brings to mind that book, Too Busy Not to Pray.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and that's actually it was this conversation about how do you
Hmm.
fit God into your life that
Yeah.
caused me to write 2 books. Feeling Loved was the first one,
Nice. Yeah.
and then, because women were like, "Well, how do you find time for God in your busy life?" And at the time, I was managing a restaurant, managing the
Hmm.
retail store, writing books,
Wow.
speaking, homeschooling my kids. It was so
Wow.
intense, and I'm like, "I don't understand the question. How do you not find time for God in your life?" That's what I
Yes.
wanna know.
Yes.
But they were asking me, "Seriously, how do you
Mhm.
find time?" So I
Yeah.
wrote the book Feeling Loved about that, and then they loved that book, but then it was like, but, like, I needed something more practical. And so I wrote the book Flow Through Vessel because that talks about, yeah, okay, you have your structured, like your habits. Like I brush my teeth in the morning and I meet with Jesus in the morning. I mean,
Mhm.
these are my
Yes.
structures.
Yes.
I just do it.
Mhm.
But then you also have the daily air of prayer where you're just breathing. It's arrow prayers and it's just
Yes.
calls for help
Yes.
and it's praises as you go.
Mhm.
And that's the 4 R's. And the 4 R's that are in that book, Flow Through Vessel, also help us to do that grieving right
Mhm.
there when it's
Mhm.
fresh. Because I say, with the sorrows that come in our life, if
Mhm.
we allow the sadness to just grab hold, it's
Mhm.
kind of like we've jumped on a merry-go-round. And as it goes faster and faster, it's harder to jump off.
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
hard once it really
Mhm.
gets a hold. It's not
Mhm.
impossible, but it's just such a wonderful practice to just run to Jesus with every
Yes.
thought.
Yes. I agree. I definitely
Yeah,
agree. Yes.
yeah. So talk to us about the role of unforgiveness.
Yeah, wow, it's been huge for me. I mean, there's been different things, my past, my relationship with my parents, especially my mom. I've had to work on a lot of forgiveness. Honestly, like having a baby, we talked a little bit about that. I had really bad postpartum with my daughter. I would say even had prepartum. Like I was so nervous about having a child because of
Right.
what I had gone through. And so I definitely had to start working
Mhm.
on it then. I started seeing a therapist after my daughter was born. And I remember her saying to me, Amy, if you don't forgive your mom, you're going to do the exact same thing to your
Yes.
daughter that happened to you. And talk about, just mental illness and undiagnosed and maybe the shame
Mhm.
of not being able to address it. And now we can talk about that. So it helps me to forgive, realizing like there's
Yeah.
probably some undiagnosed mental illness and, it gives me compassion. but just having to make a choice to forgive, even when you don't feel like it, even when you feel like justified to hold that grudge, but it really
Sure.
keeps you in bondage, right? It keeps you in a
Mhm.
prison. And so just making that choice to forgive, it really frees you. And I remember thinking that seems selfish to forgive for yourself, but it does free
Mm.
you to become who you're meant to be, to become the mom, the wife. And then really it does give you compassion. So I would say it's definitely something you choose to do. And you have to say it out loud daily. Like, I choose to forgive whoever, right? For whatever. Because as long as you
Mhm.
keep thinking about these painful memories, and then more you start to say that, I choose to forgive, and for what, and then pray a blessing, then you start to release it. And in time, you'll find like, wow, I've completely forgiven this person. And now you just feel
Mhm.
compassion, and now you want
Yeah.
to pray for them because,
Right.
hurting people hurt others. And so that
Right.
person's hurting. And so, yeah, it just
Mm.
totally will turn your world around. And I think that a lot of times we could be stuck in that bitter place and we can't move forward into what God has for us. And so it's so important. I think it's the key to moving forward and getting unstuck in life. It's just checking your
Yeah.
heart. Like, who do I
Mhm.
need to forgive?
Yeah, something's bubbling to my thoughts here about forgiveness. So I always thought that if I had forgiven somebody, but then I felt unforgiveness later, that apparently I hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I came to understand that it's more like if you think of a piece of wood and a
Okay.
screw,
Mm-hmm.
and how when you screw that screw into the piece of wood, you get it there, good. But it can almost always go farther, right? There's
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
you
Yes.
just get it as far as you have the strength to get it that
That's
day.
good. That's good.
And when
Yeah.
it comes up again, this feeling of unforgiveness, you just
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, I get some more healing in this moment.
Yes. I love that.
And
Yes.
and it changes it from, because the enemy always wants to tell you, oh, you thought you did so well, but you didn't really forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. You really did. You forgave
Yes.
everything you could forgive or knew to forgive on that
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yeah.
But now something else comes and slaps you,
Sure.
or you're in a different situation, feeling it differently,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And it's that
Yeah.
gold, it's the dross coming to the surface so
Mm-hmm.
that we can skim it off of the gold.
I
And
like that.
I
Mm-hmm.
really like when God works on me,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's maybe painful to get worked on, but I keep seeing it as, yes, I want to get that dross off instead of stirring it back in.
Yes, I love
Because
that.
it's my
Yes.
choice, right? I can stir it back in
Yes.
and I can keep holding on to it, or we
Mhm.
can just be done today and move on.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I love that.
I love
Yeah.
God's healing. So, how
Yes.
do we create an atmosphere of calm? You've gone through so much in the past 4
Yes.
years, really. I mean,
Mm.
really intense stuff. You've
Mhm.
had to kind of cry your way through some of it,
Mhm.
feeling just, at sea.
Yes.
And so, how do you bring calm to your family when
Yes.
you yourself are even
Mhm.
just processing?
Yeah, I would have to say it's definitely a work in progress. Our house is
Mhm.
isn't always calm,
Sure.
but I realize it starts with me. Like, I feel like I have to find that place, like you said, and that's where prayer comes in, or fasting. Like, I have to find that way of meeting with God so I can be strong, so I can be strong for my family, be strong for
Yeah.
my son, who is affected even with, mental health and with learning disabilities and just physical things. I mean, thankfully, it's a mild form, but he's still a number of ways. And I feel like I need to be strong for him or for, my daughter or whatever. So I have to first, get with Jesus, and really, more I pray, the more I'm filled with his spirit. And kind of
Mhm.
what you were talking about with forgiveness, like our hearts, he wants to like cleanse our hearts, and he's working in our hearts, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially this last year or so. So he's really wanting to bring our hearts into that pure place with him. And so I think, through that, I'm having more of a love for my family and wanting to pray. Like, now I'll pray over the house when they're gone,
Yeah.
pray throughout each person's room. Sometimes I'll like lay hands on their clothes or their bed and pray for things that God shows me they need
Mhm.
prayer for. Um, let's see, what else do I do? We work on family dinners, right? So we're gonna try as much as we can to get together as a family and do dinner, and some different things we do at dinner, like We have a God box, which I learned about this from a pastor. So we put ways we've seen God work. So each of us will take a couple of slips of paper and we review past ways he's answered prayers, and then we'll add a couple new ones. So we'll do the God box. We go around the table and say what we're thankful for, or highs and lows for the day. Another thing we've learned to do is give each other permission to talk about the hard things. So there's literally been times we'll say, okay, everyone gets the floor for like 5-10 minutes, just share what's on your heart. And sometimes we're sharing things and we're crying, each one of us maybe, and we're just, struggling. Of course, my husband's like a rock, but the rest of us, he does share what he's struggling with. But sure. I think just giving each other permission to be yourself and let down at home and what's really going on, because you have to like let it out, So these are just some different strategies we've tried as a family to create calm and peace.
So one of the things I want to point out about what you said is that one of the principles is that I cannot give something I do not have.
Yes.
So if you need money and I don't have any, I can't help you. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I might give you something else, but I can't give you money.
Yes.
If you hadn't learned how to grieve with Jesus, you wouldn't be able to teach your kids how to grieve with Jesus.
You're right. You're right. And in fact, it was a mom that said to me, several years ago, maybe before Ashton's diagnosis, but he had problems when he's younger. She's like, Amy, you really need to allow God to heal you so you can be whole for your children. Like the way she said it, it was kind of like a little bit of a rebuke, but it was like, I need to really, what do I have to do to get whole in my life so I can give them? Yeah.
No, it's so true. And I have this holiday boot camp that I teach every year. And that's the premise of that is how you do the holidays is role modeling for your children how to do the holidays.
Okay. Wow.
Good. Yeah. And so we can just slog through it, get overtired, spend too much, overcommit, or else we can model good behavior.
Yeah.
But you have to actually step out of like the workbook helps because you have to step kind of out of your thinking in order to change this, because you're just doing it pretty much the way your mom did it. And then you're tweaking it however you know how,
Yes.
So I think that there's in all areas of life, we've talked about this a couple times during this conversation. Get help. Get a coach, get a mentor, get a therapist, get a doctor, get help. If you need help, if you see that your brain is broken somewhere, go get help.
Yes.
And it's okay. We're all broken. I can't even get over how broken I am, all the time. It's like, really, I am so broken and God still uses me.
I know. It's amazing.
And that's all he has to use, Amy, is broken people. He doesn't have any perfect ones.
You're right. You're right. And I think too, another thing I thought of is like renewing your mind. Kind of you're hitting on that a little bit too about, your workshop at Christmas. He's really taught me how to reestablish my thoughts. It's kind of like my therapist said, it's programming your computer. Like you may have been taught these things or things spoken over you, or and like learning to get that out. So I talk about that in my book under Right Alignment, I think. And then my last chapter too, of my new prayer journal. And one strategy I learned from Norman Vincent Peale. He's like, if you have this thought that keeps going through your head, say stop out loud and then say the opposite. So when I was doing my first book, I kept thinking, I can't do this. I don't have what it takes to write and publish a book. And then I have to say stop. And then I would say, I have what it takes to write and publish a book. And then I would add in Jesus' name, because there's power in the name of Jesus. So whatever your thought is, because like for me, like being abused in the past, the thought could come, you're going to abuse your child or you're going to do this. And like, no, I will not abuse my child in Jesus' name. I will be a loving mom. I will be supportive, whatever the wrong thought is, replace it, So, and I feel like God taught me too one time about mailbox, like thoughts coming into your mailbox. It could be like if you live at a place and someone used to live there and the mail comes in and it's like to the previous owner. So like he kind of taught me that too. Like you could be getting thoughts. It's from the enemy. I mean, it's not me. It's not you. So it's just like, nope, this is not from God. This is not from me. Return to sender. I rebuke this thought in Jesus' name. So
love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Don't take any mail. That's not yours.
That's right. I have to include something here. The gal that wrote the book, God, You've Got Mail. She would get actually bills addressed to her. It was her husband deserted her when she had a new child. brand new baby,
Mhm.
and her husband just left. And so
Mm.
she's just destitute, literally.
Yeah.
And she'd get these bills and she wouldn't know what to do with them. And she'd
Mm.
fret. And finally she thought, God, I just can't handle it.
Yeah.
So she'd get the bill and she'd hold it up, and she said she wouldn't even open the envelope. She'd just go, God, you've got mail. And she'd put it over here.
Oh, wow.
And then when God would send her money,
Mhm.
through whatever source, she would get money. She'd get a little
Mhm.
job here or maybe
Mhm.
babysit there or whatever. People would send her money.
Mhm.
She'd just go over to the pile and she'd sort through until God stopped her. And then she'd open that one and he'd pay
Yeah.
that bill.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, we serve a mighty
Mhm.
God. And I think we
Yes.
don't
That's
tap
so
into
cool.
him
I love
nearly
that.
enough.
Yes.
So, love this time. I just love you, Amy. I'm
Thank
looking
you,
forward to
Marnie.
lots more times with you. But you guys, you totally want to check out Amy's new book, Unstuck, as
Mhm.
well as your website is just your name, Amy Joob, but it's
Mhm.
JOOB.com,
Yes.
Amy Joob.
Yeah.
And when they go over there, what are they going to find, Amy?
You can find a free mini course on prayer. Yes. And I need to put up, if I have not already, because my book just came out, information, but it's on Amazon. So it's Unstuck, Step into the New, a 40-day prayer journal. But yeah, you can find lots of fun stuff over there, some blogs and things as well.
I just gave you a good review at Amazon earlier today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Marnie.
Love you and love what God does through you.
Thank you.
You're just beautiful inside and out, my dear.
You're so sweet. I appreciate
And
you.
thanks, you guys, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.